Hey, everybody. Glad to be back. This is our second weekly viewing of Military Money Mistakes Live. And I just wanted to send a quick appreciation to everybody who engaged with the first one. I was really surprised at how many people showed up and people reached out to me afterwards. Very cool. And a quick introduction to last week we were trying to get him on. I had some issues with the link, but Scott and I do the majority of the US VetWealth stuff. But even then, we still have people that we partner with to kind of help us find solutions to a lot of the issues that the people we work with have. And so I wanted to introduce a big part of that, Mike Seabolt.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Yep. And so Mike works with us to kind of help tailor some of these solutions that we do with people to, because everybody's different, right? And what works for one person won't work for another. So Mike's kind of like our specialist to help us get all that stuff done. And he unfortunately he wasn't able to make it in there last week, and but he's here now. So let me see here. I wanted to get our little banner up there too. I don't know if we can do that. um, nope, that's not it. Anyways, so we'll kind of get started. The example today's really the big thing that we're talking about today is going to be qualifying for life insurance, and I really wanted to talk about this one because there there are a lot of uh, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about qualifying for life insurance when you get out of the military. And, I think the big problem is I've seen a lot of advice that's not, I don't want to say it's bad. It's just not great. Right. And it's from people who don't work in life insurance. And it's also unintentional. They don't know, right? A lot of this stuff is just somebody reading an article that somebody else wrote, and that's why we try to be very intentional about creating our own articles and things like that. That the people that talk to us, they know they're getting the highest fidelity information because it comes from the source, right? I don't go out and look at other people's articles. Speaking of which, I thought this was funny. Somebody sent me a post that another I won't name names on here, but another financial services professional. He said, I read this guy's post and literally I thought, I just read that not too long ago. So this dude had found my post on LinkedIn and copied and pasted it into another post. So I don't know if I should feel vindicated or if I should be mad or what, but either way.
I think what do they say? Duplication is the
Yeah.
sincerest form of flattery, right?
Imitation, right?
Imitation.
So, but anyways, I'm not going to harp on that because no big deal. It's good to know that I'm putting out stuff that's good enough that other people want to steal it. So yeah, where are we getting a lot of this bad advice from? Well, social media, obviously, there's a lot of that stuff out there. There's a lot of people who are maybe new to the industry or just don't know what they're talking about, putting out these posts saying, "Oh yeah, you should do this, you should do that." Um, when it comes to these types of decisions, there's in person. Anybody who's going through military retirement knows you've probably talked to a whole bunch of people who have been like, "Oh yeah, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this." Well, that kind of reminds me, you remember that game we used to play when we were kids where I would tell you something and then you would tell the next person something and then they would tell, a lot gets lost in translation when it doesn't come from the source, which again, I think, is justification for us being a source of reliable information that people can look at. And it's cool to be that one of those people who puts that stuff out and have people engage with that. So, I think, and then the last one, this is probably, I think this is the biggest issue right here because I see this a lot. These checklists. Now, I like checklists. They're a good way to kind of put some information out there for people who really don't know what to do or when to do it. However, again, too, a lot of these checklists are created by people. Maybe they get some input from somebody who works in a particular industry. Maybe they don't. Probably the biggest one that I see is a lot of these checklists have you getting life insurance when you're 6 months from retirement. And that to me is kind of a big deal. Sorry there. Uh, okay. Sorry. I had an issue there with my stream echoing. But so, all right. The joys of going live, right?
I hear you fine on
So
this side.
one
There's
of
no
the
echo at
things
all.
that I wanted to, um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about on here, right? These checklists, they say 6 months out from retirement. That's when you want to. That's when you want to start looking at life insurance. That is not correct. I'm just going to put that out there right now. As somebody who works in the industry and has done this for 5 years with hundreds of people, you want to definitely give yourself a lot more time than that. And, a lot of that comes from, you know, um, a lot of that comes from just the amount of time it takes to get an idea of what you qualify for. And so, one of the things we're going to discuss today are some of the biggest mistakes or misconceptions that are made by people who are going through the retirement process in regards to life insurance. Because I've heard this all the time. People who say, "Oh, I won't get it because I got this disability or that." Yeah. So we're going to talk about that today a little bit, and probably the first one, right? So as I talked about with the checklist, the timeline, that's probably the most important one, in my opinion, because that's where a lot of people get caught up most of the time is when we talk about timelines, right? So, like I said before, those checklists, they all say, "Oh, 6 months out." The biggest problem with that is severely out of sequence with when we talk about your VA disability, right? So that you think about that when we're doing 6 months out, right? We're missing that time for VA disability. Um, when we do that, we're documenting all this stuff, medical issues that we have. We're trying to qualify for this VA disability rating. Well, that kind of runs concurrently to getting qualified for life insurance. Because obviously life insurance, they're looking at, uh, you know, it's based off of really two things: how healthy you are and how old you are. And so, if we're going through our records and getting all this stuff put in our records, well, what do you think the insurance company is looking at when they're trying to figure that out? So, realistically, if you're going to qualify for life insurance, the big thing that you want to do is make sure you do that before you start getting all this stuff documented in your record, right? We spend our whole career not putting stuff in our records because we want to be able to go out and deploy and do all these things. And then we get to the end and we're like, just a bum rush. Let's get everything in there as fast as we can and make sure that we, make sure that we can get as much stuff in there as possible so we get the best possible disability rating. So, my specific advice on this, the underwriting process can be slow too. So that's another one. I've had a few people recently where they come to me when they're 2 months away and they're like, "Well, yeah, I'm on a tight timeline." And I'm like, "Yep, you're telling me." Uh, the underwriting process can be slow sometimes, right? It can take a while, especially when you talk to these military treatment facilities when they order records from them. They will take their sweet time getting that stuff out. They will say, "Yeah, we have 30 or 45 days to get this stuff out." And you can believe that they're going to get out. They're going to take as much of that time as possible to get those records out to the insurance company. So, make sure you stay on top of that as well. Go talk to, become friends with somebody who works there, who's the records person, and say, "Hey, can you help me out with this? These guys are going to be sending you a request." The other piece with that is making sure you give yourself enough time. 6 months, too late. 2 months, way too late. Right now, you're in kind of like panic mode. My specific recommendation, if you have it, at least 12 months, at a minimum 12 months. and make sure you definitely start doing that before you start getting everything documented in your record. A lot of people would say even 18 months, which, if you have a lot of issues and you need to kind of get an informal look at, it's kind of one of the things we do. We can do informal looks at this stuff and make sure that, we get an idea of like what you're looking at before you go apply anywhere. But yeah, 18 months, I would say, is probably optimal. At a minimum, 12 months. So sorry, I know that was long-winded there, but Mike, we got anything to add to that?
No, well, first of all, Trevor, thank you for inviting me on your show.
I think you're muted.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me? I think you might have turned your speaker
I still
off.
can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm not muted. Maybe it was your echo thing.
I can't hear you, Mike.
Hello? Yeah, I can hear you, and I'm not muted. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I think everyone else can hear me as well. Perhaps when you had that mute, when you were having the issue with your feedback, that was the challenge.
All right. I can't hear what he's saying. I don't know if anybody else is having that issue. Yeah. All right, man, I should have had Scott come in and help me run this thing. Anyways, all right. So I'm having an issue here in Mike. I don't know if everybody else is because I'm not listening to the actual stream itself. Anyways, so I'll keep going down my list here. Second one, from an issue of qualifying for life insurance. Big one here is when we talk about activities, foreign travel, things like that. Oh, okay. It looks like somebody can hear Mike. I can't hear Mike.
Yeah, I think you're the only one. Yeah.
So, yeah, let me see here if there's an issue with my. Can you guys hear me? Sorry. Good stuff. I'm glad we get to work this out early before anybody's really paying
All we're
attention
live,
to this.
right? All we're live.
Next big thing, activities, foreign travel. That's another huge one. Extreme sports, diving. Are you going to dangerous places? That's another big topic that a lot of people seem to have issues with. You think about that, extreme sports. Oh, you go jump out of airplanes. This is a big thing too when you're in the military, especially have going out and doing like free fall and diving, things like that. Sounds like I can hear you now, Mike.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. So I think everyone else could hear me as well. So I think it was an audio issue, but nonetheless, I'm glad I'm online now. Hi. Nice to see you, Trevor. I appreciate you bringing me on here, and I appreciate the time. Just by way of introduction, so Bell and Associates is our firm in Phoenix. We are an insurance brokerage firm. We represent basically every insurance company out there. I work with Trevor and Scott and US VetWealth to help identify opportunities for their clients and really help our transitioning veterans as they're moving into the second career stage of their life. And we're really talking about today the qualification for life insurance, the underwriting process for life insurance. And I think it's meaningful to touch a little bit on VGLI and SGLI, because I think a lot of what I'm hearing actually is a lot of our retiring military, our veterans I've got this SGLI thing. Why do I need other insurance? And I think that's important to understand the differences between what we're talking about. And that's probably good for another call, understanding why this private insurance might be more advantageous. But speaking to the underwriting process specifically, and I think Trevor shared a little bit of this with you folks, but Our firm, again, as an independent broker, we represent, I don't know, 80 different insurance companies, probably everybody that you're familiar with. And one of the things that we do, particularly for our transitioning veterans, our folks that are coming out of service, is we do, as Trevor mentioned, an informal inquiry. So what is that? It's meaningful to understand that. We have the option to go and provide medical records to 5, 6, 7, 8 different carriers, 8 different insurance companies, and allow those companies to compete for the business. So we're not a captive agency. We have everyone. And why would I want to do that? Well, as Trevor mentioned, and as you guys well know, at transition through the VA disability process, and there are, things that are going to your medical records that may make life insurance underwriting challenging. So being able to go to, again, a half a dozen or more different companies and allow them to, again, compete for the business gives us some leverage and allows us to be more impactful and help more people. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here. We're really here to add value to our transitioning veterans and their families. And that's really what we do. And so, yeah. So Trevor, hope that helps a little bit.
Yep. And especially now that I can hear you. So cool. The joys of doing everything live. So yeah, we already kind of went through the timeline thing. I was bumbling through that while I was trying to fix it to where I could get the stream working well. Point taken there, and then we kind of moved down the list to what's something else that affects your underwriting. We looked at activities, foreign travel, things like, skydiving. This one always cracked me up. Like scuba diving, they consider, based off of my experiences working in the industry, they consider that to be more dangerous than skydiving, which I thought was funny. But, I guess statistically speaking, the numbers back it up, because you think about, like, I can remember going out and doing recreational scuba diving, like outside of the Navy. And there's like little kids, there's like little 8-year-old girls out there with their family, and we're going out and diving on shipwrecks and stuff. And I thought, well, I guess maybe I could see that. Right. So, if you dive, then, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that from a risk perspective, the type of diving you're doing, how deep you go, your experience level. But I always thought that was weird that diving was more considered statistically more dangerous than skydiving. So, but the other one too, foreign travel. So if you're doing a lot of foreign travel, if you're going to some of these places that are considered to be dangerous, obviously, we're talking about life insurance here. So if there's a risk factor that they think may increase your mortality, then yes, that's going to affect the rating that you get.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think it's meaningful to understand exactly what that means. What they're asking you is, as you're sitting down at the table to apply for this life insurance policy, do you have booked travel to a hazardous location? Do you have a trip coming up to Guatemala? Do you have a trip coming up to Colombia or Venezuela or somewhere in the Middle East that's got, obviously high risk of hazard? Booked travel, I said that meaningfully, right? So a lot of us at transition, we want to travel, right? We've spent 20 years in, we're moving to the second stage of our life, and we want to go around the world. But I always state, as we're applying for this life insurance, as we're sitting at the table today, do you have a trip booked to Colombia, Guatemala, Venezuela? The answer to that's generally no. And so we provide some guidance there. Now, listen, if we were also honest, if you do have a 3-month sabbatical to the Central and Middle East, we disclose that. But I just want to make sure that when we talk through this, we understand that how the insurance company is looking at it, again, today as we're applying, not something we are contemplating doing next year or 5 years from now.
Yeah. And so that's I always tell it to people, like, look, if you don't have solidified plan, like, maybe you might go here, maybe you might go there. If you don't have solidified plans, if your job doesn't require you to go there, we got to go with the information that we have at the time, right? The next big one, so this is a huge one, not necessarily just because it determines your ability to qualify, but even if you do get qualified, what you might pay for a life insurance policy. Now we're going to talk about tobacco and marijuana usage. Obviously, for people who are transitioning out of the military, the marijuana one's not that big of a deal. but the tobacco absolutely is. It's an X factor, right? So when we talk about that, we're looking at what type of tobacco are you using? Are you smoking? Are you chewing? Are you vaping? And actually, there's some companies out there that will give you non-tobacco rates if you're chewing, right? If you're not smoking, you can actually still get a non-tobacco rate. So definitely, beneficial to do that informal look like Mike was talking about there, to see like, hey, who would offer me a non-tobacco rating? Because I'll tell you, the difference in premium between tobacco and non-tobacco is pretty significant.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that as well, because there are different kinds of life insurance, right? And I'm just going to talk about two today that we use most frequently with our transitioning veterans: term insurance and permanent or IUL insurance. As Trevor correctly pointed out, on a term insurance policy, which is just a death benefit protection, it protects against the big risk. It protects against, oh my gosh, I got hit by a bus and my family has no income for the rest of their lives because I was the primary breadwinner. So term insurance just protects against death. The term insurance premiums are greatly impacted by tobacco, somewhere between a 15 and 30% additional premium for a tobacco user, a smoker, versus non-tobacco. On the permanent insurance, however, and as Trevor knows, we do a lot of survivor benefit plan replacement deals, and we can get into that on another call. But for those permanent insurance where we're building cash value, we're using it as a life insurance retirement plan, those policies are less impacted. They're less impacted by a smoker rating. They're less impacted by a rated case, like if you're less than standard health, because it's designed for cash value. And so that's meaningful to understand as well. On the term insurance, you're going to pay more. On the permanent side, it's less impactful. And generally speaking, we use both combinations for most of our veterans, because we want to protect against the short-term risk, the 20 years of something bad happening, falling out of the air in a plane or hit by a bus, so to speak. But we also want to provide that long-term cash accumulation strategy. And again, in that world, a rating or a tobacco versus non-tobacco, again, less impactful.
Yep. And there's stuff that goes into that too. They'll ask you about it. They want to know your frequency of use. Medical marijuana versus recreational. I know those are two different things. If you're prescribed it versus like, yeah, I just do it for fun. Those are all factors that are taken into consideration whenever they do that. But the next big thing, Mike, did you have anything else to add on to that?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Next big thing, medical, your medical underwriting. So these are really what they're looking at are chronic medical conditions. And when I say chronic, that means like, lifetime. This is something that could potentially have an effect on your mortality. Again, too, life insurance, they're looking at, they've done a pretty good job over the years of putting together the math to figure out, hey, how long are you going to live? They don't always get it right, but they're pretty good. So we'll just kind of go down a list of like, what are some of the big things that they look at, when they're evaluating you medically. First and foremost, obviously the BMI. Are you 6'2" and 185 pounds and 2% body fat, or are you 5'4" and 250 pounds? That does have an effect, even if it's all muscle. Like as I kind of learned a little bit about that too, when they talk about being overweight versus obese, like you could be that dude who's 5'6" and 250 pounds and solid muscle, but you're still considered overweight or obese, right? Whether the weight is muscle or fat, obviously there's some other stuff that goes into that, but your body doesn't know the difference, right? 250 pounds is still 250 pounds. So the body mass index plays a part in that. And it will affect your rating too. Like a lot of the insurance companies have little charts they can say, hey, at this height and up to this weight, we can offer this rating. At this height and this weight, we can offer this rating. So even if everything else is 100% like, yeah, this guy's super healthy and everything, it's just, he's 5'6" and 250 pounds of solid muscle. we can only offer this. Which it was kind of enlightening for me. I was like, I guess I never really thought about it that way. The next big thing, cardiac issues, your heart. What about blood pressure, cholesterol? Are you taking medication for it? Have you any other kind of ailments or surgeries that you've had? There's a ton of different procedures of this. I mean, we could spend an entire episode just on that right there, that topic. But we're trying to do wave tops here and say, give you like an overview. Maybe one day we'll say, hey, me and Mike are going to get on here and talk about cardiac issues. But those are things to look at. These are some of the things that we encounter a lot, are people with high blood pressure or high cholesterol, and they're taking medications for it. I know me personally, when I was retiring, I had high blood pressure. I got out, and it's funny. It seems like it kind of went away after that. Like my blood pressure I don't know if there's a correlation there or what, but for me, that was an extremely stressful time in my life. And that was something that I was dealing with at the time. I was actually diagnosed with mild hypertension. Ever since I retired, my blood pressure has been relatively normal.
Yeah, I'll speak to that if you wouldn't mind as well, Trevor.
Yeah.
So, medical underwriting is what Trevor's referring to. And I don't want you to come away from this feeling that there's all these bad things out there. In the reality of it, the way these insurance companies are doing underwriting these days, they really lean heavily on artificial intelligence. So the first thing they'll do in an underwriting is do a prescription medicine check. Let's see what drugs you're taking. They will also do an in motor vehicle division check and make sure there's no DUIs or bad things. Then they'll do a Nexus Lexus. So they would really rather not send a doctor to your home and do a physical exam. They would, because there's a cost associated with that, of course. They would rather use artificial intelligence and do what we call accelerated underwriting. So while there are things to consider from an underwriting perspective, and Trevor's done a wonderful job of pointing those out, I want to make sure everyone takes away that it's not a cumbersome process. And because of the way our firm works with these different carriers, we know how to massage that process. Let's say we do have a client with a cardiac issue. Prudential is generally good with heart. Let's say we have a client with a cancer issue. John Hancock is generally good with cancer. So we know which carriers that we represent are stronger in certain ailments. But quite frankly, our approval ratio is somewhere around 80 to 85%. So almost everyone we work with, and this includes our transitioning veterans, we're able to provide benefits. We're able to provide protection solutions for their family. So yes, there are considerations, but there's also a way to circumvent those.
Yep. And so, the big piece with that is like understanding what are we working with here beforehand. So some of the other issues we'll talk about, we'll cover them quickly. We're not going to deep dive this, but diabetes, obviously, that's something that could affect your underwriting. Respiratory, I bring this one up because this is another big one with people who are retiring out of the military. Sleep apnea. How bad is your sleep apnea? Are you using a CPAP or do you have any other kind of treatment? That's one that we deal with a lot because a ton of people, myself included, have sleep apnea or have been diagnosed with sleep apnea while they were in the military. I don't know how many people are going to continue to pursue that now that they're not giving you the automatic 50% VA disability with that. But it is something that, a lot of people will go through and get sleep studies done before they retire to try to make sure that stuff gets documented in their records. But it will affect your underwriting. Cancer, this is another big one too. And we've actually recently, we've dealt with several of these cases, trying to help people, as Mike was talking about, doing the informal evaluations and reaching out to different carriers who kind of specialize in this stuff and getting an idea of, some of the big things with that, the type of cancer, the location, what stage you're in, have you had any treatments or surgeries? So that's again too, like that's obviously, my other podcast, Get to Vet, we had a guy on there not too long ago that we interviewed. He was diagnosed with colon cancer at 35, got a bunch of treatments done. He actually, I think he died from getting one of the treatment, like he had chemo and he died. They brought him back. But after a couple of years of treatments, they told him, there's nothing we can do for you. You're terminal. And to me, it was kind of eye opening. We'd recorded that episode with him on a Thursday. We released the episode on a Monday. And Tuesday night, we had gotten text messages saying that he had passed away. He'd taken a turn for the worse that Sunday. And so, yeah, I mean, it was weird, crazy to think about that. Here's this guy I just talked to a couple of days ago who seemed fine. And a few days later, he was gone. But then again,
the cancer aspect as well, because I think it's important. So, many, as we know, the cancer is prevalent in our world, and people suffer, and it's a horrible thing, but it is what it is. The reality is the insurance underwriters understand that as well. So often people say, well, I've had cancer in the past, I never get life insurance. That's not the truth. In reality, most cancers, once we're post-treatment, in full remission and post-treatment, we absolutely can get you and your family protected. So I don't want you to think, oh, I had cancer 5 years ago. I had, skin cancer, throat cancer, urinary, whatever it is. Now I can never get life insurance. It's really the opposite. And that's becoming better and better every year. So don't exclude yourself rather from evaluating this opportunity just because there was cancer in your history. Because again, once we're post-treatment and in full remission, we generally can help you get protected as well.
Yeah. And we just got somebody through not too long ago. And that was awesome. Like, it was great to be able to give them the good news and say, hey, we went back, and Mike kicked down the guy's door with a big axe and was like, you're going to approve this.
It works.
Not really. It's just how I pictured it in my head. So a couple other things too, right? Issues with, major organs, your liver, your digestive tract, your circulatory system. Those are all, again, too, chronic medical conditions that can affect your underwriting. Hepatitis, cirrhosis, those are some of the big ones. Any kind of aneurysms that you may have had, definitely prevalent. And then the last one too, your family history of chronic illnesses. Is there a history of strokes or heart attacks, cancer in your family? Did you have any family members that died, extraordinarily early due to one of those illnesses? Those are all things that they want to look at and take into consideration. And so really this stuff that we're talking about, this is just going down a checklist that we have that, when we go help somebody figure out, like, what do I qualify for? These are a lot of the things that we're asking them as we go shop that out. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd love to, man. I'd love to. We've talked a lot of sickness here. We've talked about a lot of bad things that can happen. And really what I want you to take away from this session is, if you've had health challenges in the past, if you have health challenges currently, working with us through Trevor and US VetWealth and Military Money Mistakes, we've got every option on the table. So even if some of these challenges have been in your medical history or in your family medical history, again, don't discount our ability to help you. So I want to the takeaway would be, after all that bad stuff about bad health, the takeaway is, gosh, guess what? We can still help. 9 times out of 10, we can still provide a benefit for you and your family. So I think that's the main thing, is even if you've had cancer, had a heart attack, had stroke, had these things happen to you in the past, don't think that we can't help, because we certainly still can.
Yeah, that was going to be kind of like my thing at the end, is like, yes, this is a lot of stuff that we talked about. Those are all bad things. But, the problem with that is a lot of people let that ward them off from even trying. And it was kind of the thing I was going to wrap up with, is like, hey, don't write something off until right? Because there may be better options out there for you as you go through the process. But I'm just really, we'll talk about a couple other things here that we look at, that military retirees that deal with. And these are all, a lot of stuff is things that I've had to deal with myself too, as I kind of went through the process of qualifying for alternatives and, went through the same process. But the next big thing that I want to talk about, and I think Billy asked about this before, I'm assuming BH means brain health. That's funny. In my notes, that's what it says: mental/brain health. This is becoming more and more prevalent of an issue, especially for guys like me that, I've been through a lot of TBIs. The problem is, the science when I retired, it's crazy to think I've already been retired for 5 years. But, 6 years ago, as I was kind of going through and being evaluated for all this stuff, there was a lot of stuff out there, information that they didn't have as far as the science behind TBIs that, has come out now. And so for me, I had never had a single concussive event. So they wouldn't diagnosed me with TBI. They said, yeah, you've had several subconcussive events where you weren't rendered unconscious. And I even asked the neurologist, we went to Intrepid Spirit, which is a big, huge, their sister lab is NICO. And this is stuff that they specialize in as far as like, transitioning service members, a lot of helping people get back into the fight is the neurology aspect of that. And so, all of this stuff depends on what is your diagnosis, what was your treatment. For me, really, as I was kind of going through, and I want you to know you're not alone if you're feeling some of the stuff that I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I kind of went through as I was transitioning. Anxiety, oh my God. I had a ton of that going. That was the most nerve-wracking time of my career, is when I was going through my military transition. And that's coming from a bomb tech, right? So the anxiety and depression, those are issues that a lot of people in the military deal with. Alcohol and drug abuse, again, too, unfortunately, that's another big thing. Luckily, I think they've gotten smarter about that, and they're trying to work on more preventive stuff than corrective treatments. Post-traumatic stress, a lot of people, again, too, this is some of that stuff that I'm talking about. Luckily, before I had gotten all this documented in my record, I was able to qualify for my life insurance policy before that. But post-traumatic stress, I mean, like literally I had years of my life where I was home for 6 months, deployed for 6 months. And, I got to see and do a lot of cool things and see a lot of action, but, that stuff takes a toll on you, and it doesn't always necessarily, you don't feel that toll right away. A lot of the times it happens, several years down the road. And so it's important to get that stuff documented in your records, because now we're looking at not just, do I qualify for life insurance, but hey, do I qualify for treatment for this stuff 10 or 20 years later down the road? And then, the traumatic brain injury, that's another big one too. That since I've retired, a lot of information has come out on that stuff. The subconcussive events. I think it was like a year after I retired, there was this big study that was released on TBIs and subconcussive events. You go look at the thresholds for a TBI, and I think just a gunshot from an M4 inside of a room, that's enough to qualify. Like the blast overpressure from that is enough to qualify for a mild TBI. I couldn't tell you how many thousands of times I've been in a room with a gun going off. So again, too, going back to what is the diagnosis and the treatment for that, as you're getting out, if that stuff's in your record, then yes, you probably need somebody to look at this and make sure, like, hey, am I going to get caught off guard if I go apply for something, or do we know ahead of time? Hey, we've had some people already look at this. We've gotten some potential feedback. Now we know, like, hey, what's the best way forward for me with this? So I know that was kind of a long-winded discussion on that, but I wanted to put some of my own personal experience in there and, talk about the importance of this and getting an idea before you, look before you leap, kind of thing. So Mike, anything to add on the mental and brain health? Oh, behavioral health. Okay.
No, I think you did a good job, buddy.
Yeah. So Billy, I hope that answered some of your questions. Again, too, that the behavioral health stuff that goes into, I kind of put that under mental health. But yeah, that's all stuff that, one of the things that we do is when we get copies of records, we look at, make sure when you do that, your regular medical record and your mental health notes Those are two separate things. And sometimes they may require different authorizations for the underwriter to get copies of those records and look at them. So again, when I was talking earlier about time, right? That's one of those things that can slow the process down. Like, oh, we got copies of your records, but now we see you got a referral to a mental health specialist. Well, now we need those records too. So again, too, goes back to time, that's why I put that as the number one thing. Medications, that's another big one that they're going to look at. Like Mike said, it's one of the first things they do is look at what kind of meds are you taking, right? So they look at the type, medications, the type, your dosage, why were they prescribed to you? And the other piece, are you actively taking them? Just like the VA, when they go give you your disability rating, unless you get permanent and total, you have to go back and be reevaluated on that stuff too. Like if you're taking medications, they want to make sure that you're actually taking those medications for the reason that they were prescribed. And let's see, I see a comment from it. It seems that medications are being used atypically are bad as well. Yeah, I mean that's. It's definitely a factor, right? It affects a lot of times. It's the, why were they prescribed is the important part. And I guess, Mike, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I've stated a couple of times, that you're on a script. That means you can't get approved, you can't get protection. Again, not how it works.
Yep.
So again, as Trevor mentioned, we just do a holistic view of your personal situation. We match you with what we feel is the best carrier or carriers to accomplish our protection objectives for your family based on your specific situation. So again, even if you're on meds, even if you've had some health challenges, we can still help protect your family.
Yep. And then last big one, obviously there's a financial component to this. They want to make sure that, you can actually justify the death benefit. Essentially what they do is they don't want somebody who's making $50,000 a year, paying for $5 million of life insurance, right? So believe it or not, there is actually a sanity check in the insurance process, in the insurance underwriting process. So they're looking at, can you justify the death benefit that you're applying for? And are you also able to adequately fund your policy? And then when we look at some of the permanent life insurance policies, there's some additional requirements there, some, kind of money laundering stuff to make sure. So if you're a crime boss, or you're planning on being a crime boss after your military retirement, they're probably going to want to make sure you're not using this as a way to launder money. So, yeah. So last big thing that I want to talk, this is like a huge misconception that I see a lot of people, I see them discuss it all the time, and it ain't necessarily so. I'm here to tell you this. The insurance company, any insurance company, they do not care about your VA disability rating. And I hear this all the time. Well, I'm rated 80 or 90%, so they probably won't approve me. Again, too, they don't care what your VA disability rating is. What they're going to do is they're going to take a deep dive and look at what are the conditions that caused you to have that rating. And we kind of went through this stuff, wave tops today. As we start to continue to build out the portal, we'll have more information on that stuff inside. And we'll continue to, put invites out there with all these live sessions. But it cracks me up when I hear that people say that all the time. Well, I got this rating, I probably won't get approved. Not true. Do not listen to that. If somebody tells you that, then that's what we called an EOD, a key ID feature, right? That just means they probably don't know what they're talking about. So don't let somebody ward you off of, getting a better deal for yourself because, hearsay. So, this kind of all goes down to okay, well, what do I do if one of the more of these topics that we talked about applies to you, right? And that's where we do the, kind of the informal review. And, if you're worried that like, hey, you know what, I think this stuff may affect me, then, I want to post a link in here. If that's something that you want to be, if that's something that you're worried about, taken care of and doing, I want to see what I get qualified for. I don't know if everybody can see this. I see it coming up on the YouTube link. I don't see it on my LinkedIn one, but I'll put it in the show notes as well. Set up a call, have a call with somebody, talk about these things beforehand, because we may actually be able to help you get through this stuff. I mean, we have the informal review where it's a questionnaire. There's a HIPAA release. If you have copies of your records, that helps speed the process up, right? We get our internal underwriter, not the insurance companies, to look at that and say, hey, they put together a summary, and they can talk to these underwriters at other insurance companies and say, hey, hypothetically, what do you think you would offer this person if they wanted to apply for a policy, right? So that kind of wraps it up. That was kind of my end piece, Mike. I don't know if you had anything else to kind of close out with.
Sure, man. And once again, thank you for having me on. I think this was highly valuable. And I think the big message we are trying to convey here is there are considerations regarding this protection benefit for your family. So working with a professional that understands those and how to address those challenges and how to properly work the system and evaluate options based on your specific situation is really what we specialize in. So I wanted to tell you, I really couldn't agree more with what Trevor said. We love helping our veterans. We love providing that peace of mind for you as we transition to the second stage of your life. And we've helped, I don't know, Trevor, 300-400 veterans over the last few years be more comfortable at the next stage of their life. And that's meaningful for us. I mean, we are love paying it forward in that capacity. So I just want to thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and lend some of that expertise as well, too. So, apologize for the technology issues there at the beginning. But one last thing to talk about, too. I'm still, I've already had several people reach out to me about joining the Military Money Mistakes beta cohort. I'm going to throw the link out here on the, I'm not sure if anybody else on LinkedIn can see this or not. Maybe it's just on YouTube, but I'll again too put this in the show notes. I'll leave comments on there. If you want to look at the, hey, do I qualify? I'll have the link in there. And then again too, if you're interested in joining the beta cohort, set this call up. I'm only taking about 15 to 20 people. I have a few already that I've kind of added to the list, but still looking forward to anybody that wants to take advantage of that. You'll have access to it free for life. And, all we're asking for is you to participate and let me know what you thought was awesome and what you think could be improved upon. So appreciate that. I hope everybody has a good weekend, and I will talk to you next week. Next week, we're going to talk about the three big things that, there we go. Let me try to get out of my focus there. The three big things that cause people to fail with money, especially transitioning military people. So, I'm wearing my shirt today too. I made some Military Money Mistake shirts. Eventually, when I get the right combo of shirt and design, I'll put them up there so you can buy one. I'll try to make it as cheap as possible, but shameless plug there. Anyways, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Mike, I really appreciate you coming on. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Bye.